Hey Gear Seekers, I'm Nick. A little while ago, I started working on putting together a new server, and I was actually going to do a new server build project video series. The one thing I noticed was I couldn't really find a board that did every single thing that I wanted. Now, this video is not sponsored, it's nothing like that. Basically what happened was I went through all of our AM4 boards and I started to document which ones could work without a GPU, with a Ryzen CPU, without integrated graphics. So basically something without an APU. So I started to make that list, and then it became really apparent to me that MSI boards wouldn't run headless. So I took it on my own to address the issue with the boards. Let's roll the intro and then find out what happened. As the story goes, as I mentioned in the intro, I was doing some server build prep for this new series that I'm working on, and I wanted to build a server completely headless on an AM4 board because a lot of the X570 boards that we've got that I'm not using for anything at the moment have dual Ethernet. So it actually kind of makes the perfect use case for a headless motherboard. The problem is a lot of these AM4 boards, and more specifically the MSI ones, didn't work in headless mode. So it has been quite hit and miss. So the next logical thing I decided to do was reach out to our local MSI rep, and I was like, hey dude, is there a way that we can like get a custom BIOS so I can test this stuff out? And he just said, look, I'll do one better. Let's reach out to the BIOS team and see what they say. At first, he didn't really understand what the use case would be. And for someone like me who likes to tinker and build home servers and do video projects like this and actually use my own personal servers with desktop boards because it just works out to be cheaper, they really just couldn't grasp the idea of that use case. It's nothing against them, but it's just like a guy like me who likes to build servers and stuff at a low cost. It would make sense if we could have this feature. He put in an official request to the BIOS team, and what did they say? They said, and don't quote me on, this is not exactly what they said. They said, this is an amazing idea, and we're gonna implement it on every single AM4 board we've ever made. And me, personally, I wasn't really expecting them to have any response like that. I thought they'd maybe just like whip up a custom BIOS for the board that I was actually testing, which happens to be the X570 Ace. Turns out they had a better idea, and they're actually releasing these BIOSes with the newer GSA version that's gonna actually be releasing with the new Ryzen 3000 XT CPUs. So whenever those BIOSes are available, all the MSI boards are now going to include headless mode. What does that mean for the regular consumer out there or the PC tech enthusiast? What this means is now you can build a low cost server. So even if you were to go on the secondhand parts market and you were to pick up, let's say a Ryzen 7 1700, it's an 8-core, 16-threaded CPU at 65 watt TDP, doesn't consume a lot of power, doesn't get hot. You could pick up like an X370 board, flash the BIOS, and boot it without a GPU. What this means is you can do your complete setup of your operating system for your home server environment, do absolutely everything, pull the GPU out, boot it up, and then you can use it like a server and access it remotely. Now, this feature is a pretty niche feature. I'm going to admit that not a lot of people are going to find this useful, but for people like me who constantly trawl subreddits like HomeLab, it's going to be incredibly useful. Now, how far they've actually gone with this, I haven't seen yet because I actually haven't got my hands on the BIOS, but MSI put out a press release yesterday and about the Ryzen 3000 XT processors and the new BIOSes, and this was the headline. Basically, we've got headless mode, we're doing it. Now, like I mentioned, I haven't actually got to test this or play with it yet, but one feature that I would like to see that I actually talked about a few of our community members was if they were to include this headless mode, make a toggle for it in the BIOS to not detect the primary GPU, so it still boots headless with the GPU plugged in, so then you can pass the GPU through to a virtual machine at any point in time. And the way you would reset this is just by clearing the CMOS. So I think this is would be a pretty cool addition. Whether or not they've actually done this, they might have actually done this, I don't know. Another thing I'm pretty sure people are gonna ask about is actual motherboard support. Now, I've been told that it's gonna support all the way from like A320 all the way up to X570. B550 is gonna be included as well. But the other thing MSI actually told me as well is they're gonna be supporting this feature with Z490 as well. I mean, it's not really a huge deal considering most Intel CPUs have integrated graphics, so it's not gonna be a big deal. But for other CPUs like I can't think of the one, I think the KF CPU SKUs, they don't have integrated graphics, you'll be able to do the same thing. But however, I think it's more from a cost perspective, it's probably better I would personally, if I was to do a server like this, I would probably choose X470 and use something like the Ryzen 7 1700 or the 1600 or the 2600, somewhere around that mid-range, because the cost is gonna be considerably less than actually going out and buying a server board. Because if you look at server board prices, they are almost always more expensive than they should be, but there's obvious reasons for them. Most of them, if not all of them, have a management interface so you can actually access the BIOS and do all of that stuff remotely. There's other things like redundancy for networking. There's the PCB layouts and actual PCB qualities as well. There's a lot of other features that server boards have, but since MSI doesn't actually make any server boards, turning all of their boards into server boards is a very smart move, and it's something that I can get behind, especially being a guy with the background that I have with building servers and doing a lot of stuff in the data center. It actually makes it nice for staging and testing stuff for pre-production environments too. And I'm sure there's gonna be other channels that chat about this and actually go into this, but I just wanted to let you guys know that this is something that we actually spearheaded with MSI, because it's a feature that I really, truly do believe is going to be really important in the future. I think it's going to be important right now. I think that having home servers for people who need them is very handy, and the fact that you can do it without using extra power and pulling extra power from the wall without plugging in a GPU is incredibly helpful. And it's helpful for me too, because I'm trying to build a new server. I don't want to put a GPU in it to waste heaps of power. I want to have less cabling in the server. I don't want to have to think about considerations with if the GPU is going to fit in this server case or not. I just want to use a desktop board with a regular off-the-shelf Ryzen CPU to do almost everything. Now, I did chat about like having extra features, like being able to toggle it on and off in the BIOS, having the GPU on and off. What I'd like to see, which is probably not going to happen without them charging a premium, is actually having some type of management interface in the BIOS where you can be like, hey, I want to set this Ethernet adapter as a management interface. If the board has multiple adapters, it would be really, really cool to see that. I don't see that happening anytime soon. I just feel like this is a nice little addition because MSI doesn't actually make any off-the-shelf server boards. Well, none that I'm aware of, correct me if I'm wrong, but yeah, they're not really known for doing that kind of stuff. But for an enthusiast feature, headless mode is incredibly helpful. And I can see a lot of people, honestly, I can see a lot of people making videos about them building these new headless servers, and I can guarantee you that if one motherboard vendor does it, every single one is going to follow suit, and this is going to become something that everyone will do forever. You just build this whole new enthusiast space for stuff like this, and I'm just super excited to see how this begins to take shape, because this is something I've been waiting for a very, very long time. The thing that made me reach out to MSI about this in the first place, it wasn't me like being entitled or anything like that. I was reading through Reddit and I was seeing that some people in the past have reached out to motherboard vendors and they've got certain things added. Someone I saw, they got headless mode from MSI added to a BIOS version for a certain board, for an X370 board years ago. I've seen some people make lists of AM4 boards that support headless mode, but I was like, well, there's got to be more to this. There's got to really like dive into this more. And I've actually done something like this in the past with Gigabyte. Like this is like 9 or 10 years ago. I had a a Z77 board. I had the 3770K, but the board that I had didn't support Intel VTD, so I couldn't pass through the GPU to a virtual machine, and the CPU did support it, but the board didn't support it, so I reached out to Gigabyte Support, and they actually made me a custom BIOS version that they said that they didn't support, but they would just add it because I requested it, and they actually turned that around in less than 24 hours, which I thought was pretty cool too. So that actually got me thinking. I was like, hey, you know what? I'm just going to reach out to MSI and see if they can make me a custom BIOS, but it turns out that they decided just to do it for everything, which is way cooler. Way cooler. We will have more content talking about headless mode and the intricacies of headless mode and what the use cases are, and showing you how to basically get it all up and running and just how it all works. But for now, because the BIOS versions aren't out and I couldn't actually get a BIOS early because they're just doing their thing over at MSI, I don't know what it is, but we can wait like everybody else. But yeah, I just wanted to let you guys know. Now, the board that I'm actually going to be using for the project that I'm talking about, that I've been going on about for this whole video, is the X570 Ace. The reason why, dual Ethernet, PCIe Gen 4, I want to do some Gen 4 storage on it, and just overall I found it to be a pretty decent board, and that's why I reached out to MSI in the first place. Now, remember, you don't need to use X570. I'm only using an X570 board because I can, and like I mentioned, this is supported all the way from A320 all the way up to X570. B550 is also included in this, so I'm sure there'll be a new BIOS version. Well, they said there'd be a new BIOS version for all the B550 boards, other than the ones I've already shipped. So yeah, it's coming to everything. Get excited, get keen, and I hope you enjoyed this little bit of a morsel of information that I just thought was really interesting, that I'm super excited about. And if you like this video, you know what to do. Smash like. If you had no idea what I was talking about throughout the whole video, hit the dislike button twice. Once again, thank you so very much for watching. I'm your boy Nick with Gear Seekers. You peak, we seek. And what do you reckon, Claire? Headless mode for desktop boards to make every desktop board a server board? What do you reckon?
Yeah.
It's cool, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, Claire's like, I don't quite understand. She's giving me that face, or she's like, I know exactly what you're talking about. Anyways, guys, appreciate you very much. Thanks for watching.